Are we on Talking Joe?
Brand new.
Hey, we're talking brand new Joe. Hey, we're on a brand new show. Deep dives, blow by blow. Spotting Uzis and crossbows. Like a buzzball or a pogo. Got ninjas like Don Shadow. Comics are how I spend my dough. We're coming to you in stereo. It's time for Talking Joe. With Mark and Tim, here we go.
Brand new.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, it's me, Mark, and welcome to Talking Joe, the G.I. Joe Comics podcast. If you are new to the show, you can find out all about us over on our website, which is talkingjoe.co.uk. Now, today we are doing something a little bit different than we normally do. We normally, as part of an episode, have a look at the covers in a cover gallery segment. But today we are looking at G.I. Joe Issue 1 covers. G.I. Joe Issue 1 being the new comic from Skybound, released November the 13th. And there have been so many covers that we are going to be looking at them just on their own. But I will not be doing that alone. I will, as always, be joined by my co-host. It's the Real American Tim.
I really want to talk Joe with you. It's a Real American Tim. American Tim.
Hello, Mark, and hello, listeners. It's funny, are there about 50 covers? Because this episode is called So Many Covers, and the S-O of so looks like 50 many covers.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of covers. This is the cover gallery that Greg Augustin, aka G Unit, put together to illustrate the amount of covers that are available. And as is always the case, after sharing this most recent draft, another cover got released last night. So, if you look at the grid, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 40 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're looking at least 45 at the moment, according to Greg's grid here. And I suspect there might be a couple of duplicates in there that he might not have even called out because they're basically the same cover. So we're looking at lots and lots of covers. Tim.
Yeah, this segment is one on regular episodes that I'm always prepared to talk for longer and describe more attributes of a cover, who drew it, the composition, the color artist, if it reminds us of any other cover, if it's a reference. And so when you suggested this, this takes a lot of pressure off of our regular episode on G.I. Joe #1, which will be an exciting comic to talk about and is an oversized issue. And B, I believe Mark promised this to me as a 4.5-hour episode in which I could just go as long as I needed and he would not interrupt.
I don't quite remember saying that, but
I think that's
let's
exactly
say
how I phrased it.
We definitely will be having an extra bit of excitement in the middle of the episode, that we will be having one of these cover artists pop in to talk a little bit more about their specific cover, the process around it, and all that kind of jazz. So stay tuned for our mystery guest. Don't read the title or the description below, which might give it away. I will be putting this out as an audio only episode, but I will say, please, listener, head over to YouTube, because there's going to be a lot of visual components to this episode, probably almost more than any other episode before. So you can enjoy the chat if you feel like you know the episodes and you're having a jog or whatever. But do head on over to YouTube if you are listening to this as an audio only experience.
This will flex my descriptive muscles to their utmost. Can I make a cover come alive for someone using only words and the power of their imagination?
And only one sentence per cover, because otherwise we will be here until the 13th of November. So, Tim,
Challenge accepted.
Are you ready to enter the gallery?
I am.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
So we're starting here with this handy cheat sheet from Skybound of their main, what we're going to call them, main release comics, available wherever comics are sold. Direct market comics, let's say.
Yeah. I guess non-exclusive covers, non-retailer, general release covers.
Excellent. So we've got, I think, A through to R as on these particular covers. Let's skip across to the first one there.
Okay, this is a wraparound cover. This is cover A. This is drawn and colored by Tom Reilly. The Joes are on the cover with a blue sky background. Cobras are on the back cover, where much of the sky becomes a pinkish red. The Joes and Cobras are standing amongst the wreckage of some Transformer stuff. You see something that looks a bit like Soundwave's chest, something that looks a bit like Optimus Prime's shoulder, something that looks a bit like Hound. The
green Jeep.
Yes, the green Jeep. And then a big arm and hand that could be Megatron. This cover is striking for a couple reasons. One, in many ways, it is as different as it could be from the cover to Marvel G.I. Joe #1 from 1982. That was not a wraparound, just a regular cover. That was just the heroes. That was a red background, a striking red background that had a lot of copy, a lot of type, a lot of words on it. And it was an action cover because they were rushing at you, running, and also on this tank. This is all these characters standing. The main background sky color is blue, and there is no type. And there's a new character here who we were introduced to in the Destro miniseries, and also, of course, we have this different version of the Baroness who's on the side of the good guys. And then another new character, Link, right?
Isn't he called Risk? Risk?
Yeah, I'm just getting my four-letter. Yeah, thank you. Risk. It's not Rung. Rung is this amazing transformer who was invented by the crew at IDW. This is a question this is a cover that asks a bit of a question, because you want to know what happens to these transformers, and more broadly, how are these characters going to interact with these transformers? I am really excited by this cover. If this comic book were only published with one cover, I would be thrilled. If the regular Tom Reilly, the guy who's drawing the inside, who definitely earns the rights to do a cover, the main cover, and he's also a good color artist when he colors his own covers. And also, lastly, I'll say that Duke is in the center of the proper cover, because he's the main character and he was the first to appear when the 4 miniseries showed up.
Yeah, and I believe that this cover is colored by Tom Reilly, because Geordie Belair isn't credited here, and it's a sort of it's a slightly more. I think there's a difference in the styling that Geordie is using, sort of these different techniques and contrasts, which sort of are so striking on the inside, and Tom's style is perhaps slightly more traditional in sort of the using localized color. I love the.
That said, their approaches to color are relatively similar.
Yes, yeah. And I like that you've called out that we've got the red and the blue on the two sides for the Joes and the Cobra, and that seems to be what Skybound are leaning into. That on the compendiums, they've gone for red and blue, denoting Cobra and GI Joe for the two sides. We're introduced to kind of the new look of a lot of these characters for the first time on this cover. So we've got this new character that we'll talk about a bit more. We've got sort of an updated look for Mercer, an updated look for Cobra Commander. Even Destro's look has changed slightly. He's got this sort of metallic shoulder armor. So as a first image and introduction to the series, long in advance of it actually coming out, it's very exciting to see, and also opened up for us a bit of a mystery about who we're not seeing on the cover as well, because we're not seeing any of the characters from the Scarlet miniseries, and we're also not seeing the other sort of shadow version of G.I. Joe that we were introduced to in the Energon universe. So we know that there's this kind of parallel G.I. Joe team that's got Flint and Lady J in there, and they're not appearing on this front cover.
I'll say one last thing. When I see Tomax and Zaymot, I'm always looking for their poses to be mirror images of each other, and I'm okay when they're not, because they don't have to always be mirror images of each other. And while they're not here, they are somewhat mirror images, because one is right-handed and one is left-handed, and but they're not at the same altitude. One's a little higher, one's a little closer. So they still get to be somewhat visually distinct from each other.
And I've noticed some people also, speaking of right-handed and left-handed, some people do call out when we're seeing lefties on things like covers and the consistency. We've got Duke being a lefty here. Risk is also using his left arm for his rifle here to rest it on his shoulder, and Stalker is loading or cocking his pistol with his left hand. So we're seeing some sinister left hand action here from four characters on the cover.
As covers are exaggerations and not literal scenes, I am okay with that. I do sometimes think of it because when I have drawn comics in the past, particularly Transformers fan comics, if you don't think about it, you end up a third of the time just making characters left-handed, because that's sort of how your page or your panel is composing itself. You're like, oh, well, there's a thing in the way there, so I should put the gun or the weapon here, and then you start to think about the mechanics of it. Well, that character's not a lefty. The last thing I'll say about this cover that I really appreciate is that although everyone is just standing there, Reilly manages to give every single character on this cover a different pose and a lot of variety in the facial expressions, which are all kind of determined and serious. But all the characters, someone's got one arm up, someone's got weapon down, someone's cocking a weapon, someone's crossing their arms. Some characters have their weight on their left leg, on their right leg. It's great. It's great.
And there's a lot of personality coming across through the different characters. Clutch is a very different personality to Duke and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, right. Clutch is a little relaxed, and Duke is serious, for example. Okay, cover B by Jerome Opeña and Dave Stewart. I think this is the first G.I. Joe anything Dave Stewart has colored. Dave Stewart is an in-demand color artist. He colors for all of the publishers. Right now, he's coloring Batman: The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, which is this 10-issue Tim Sale tribute miniseries by a murderer's row of artists. So he's coloring a high-profile Batman miniseries. He's also Mike Mignola's go-to color artist for Hellboy and everything related. Jerome Opeña has drawn some very exciting comics for Rick Remender at Image, for Giant Generator, and also their collaboration on Uncanny X-Force. His art is always this particular combination of highly detailed and also precise. He tends not to exaggerate things. There isn't sort of a cartoony or a stylistic exaggeration. His proportions are realistic, and yet there's this very just fine precision to his technique. This cover, all the background is muted in a tan gray. The Joes are standing on the rubble of buildings in a city, sort of after a battle. There isn't fire or smoke in the background. There's just, or maybe the entire background is smoke. Maybe that's the way to see it. Duke is front and center. He is looking below the camera, and he's the biggest. And then the other Joes, the Baroness, Stalker, Rock and Roll, Clutch, and Covergirl, and Hawk are behind him. Rock and Roll's hair, his hair and his facial hair here, has a little bit of orange red in it. So both on this cover and another one, when I saw it from a distance, I wasn't immediately sure that it was Rock and Roll, because when I see a guy in green with a yellow beard, I think Rock and Roll. I still like this image a lot, and he's doing the devil horns with his left hand. I do like this cover. It is an interesting comparison to the one we just talked about, because if you chopped off the back cover of the Tom Reilly A cover with all the villains, sort of on paper, most things are similar between Tom Reilly's front half with his heroes just standing there, and here Jerome Opeña's heroes just standing there. And yet the approach is completely different. This one is in the middle of a battle, even though there aren't explosions in the background, because three out of these Joes are actively firing and looking and in action. Duke's got a moment of being ready. And then the last thing I'll say about this is that there is some ink wash in the textures of the background, which is a technique that Opeña is using, where if he does an ink wash and then Dave Stewart puts a flat color on top of that, it ends up looking like some painted color. But it's the gradation that comes at the inking stage, which is something that Tim Sale did a lot of, actually. Speaking of Tim Sale.
Yeah, you said earlier that you mentioned Batman, The Long Halloween, the new series, and the Murderer's Row of artists working on that. I like that phrase, Murderer's Row, because we're sort of seeing that with these covers as well, that we're seeing a lot of A-lister comic creatives working on these covers, and I would include Opeña in that list. I'm also seeing this subtle, it's either a subtle inadvertent similarity or possibly subtle homage to G.I. Joe issue 4, a Real American Hero issue from Marvel back in 1982. If you look at the placements, particularly of Stalker on the far left, sort of shooting in the direction of the rest of his team, which almost made me think, you're shooting in the wrong direction, dude. And Rock and Roll on the right-hand side of the image, and we compare that again back to this one here. We've got Stalker on the far left, sort of shooting inwards towards the direction of his team. Rock and Roll, one in from the right on the right-hand side of the screen. An interesting similarity. Accidental, intentional? I don't know.
I said this was, I think, Dave Stewart's first G.I. Joe work. I missed the obvious. This is Jerome Opeña's first G.I. Joe work. And it's as you just said, it's pretty exciting. Some of the artists who are, convention sketches or commissions, I think, have probably done a little bit of G.I. Joe here or there that maybe we've seen, maybe we haven't seen. But to have some official, licensed, published cover art, and on a big deal launch, this isn't like issue 2 of a side miniseries. Mm-hmm. It makes me wonder if some of these artists will come back to do more covers or a run of covers, or maybe some interiors.
Very good. just do it a Google, see if anything was popping up against Jerome, Opeña, G.I. Joe. Doesn't look like it. I think this might be this might well be the first one that we're seeing from him. I did just find the original art for this one. Yeah, it looks nice. As you say, a lot of ink wash there that can be seen once we've stripped away the color.
Right, and I stand corrected. It's not just to describe the volume of the background rubble and shadows. It is also to create some areas of darkness and tone on the characters. Like, Duke's pants are darker than his shirt, so there's an ink wash on his pants, or the camo on a little bit of Stalker's legs and arms. This is quite handsome.
Very nice indeed. Okay, next up.
Cover C is Brett Booth with inks by Livesay and colors by Andrew Dalhouse. This is CoverGirl and the Crimson Twins falling down, let's say, a giant elevator shaft, and below them are a bunch of Crimson Guardsmen who fell first and are sort of not actively part of this. They don't have weapons. I think they are falling to their doom. Tomax and Zaymot each have what would you call these small baton weapons? Like what is?
Yeah, they look like sort of electric batons, don't they? That you might see in something like Star Wars, perhaps.
Yeah, or what Nightwing uses if they weren't electrified. So CoverGirl is firing her machine gun. Tomax and Zaymot look happy. So this actually reminds me of, I think it's Red Rocket's Glare, that 1985 episode of G.I. Joe where Flint and Lady J infiltrate the Extensive Enterprises building after dark, and Tomax and Zaymot show up, and then Lady J falls out of the side of the building, and Tomax and Zaymot are laughing when they fall with her because they're acrobats and they'll be able to get out of this, and it's a trap. This cover starts to immediately break with covers A and B because this is no longer the team, and it's also no longer sort of Duke focused if he represents the team and if his miniseries went first. This cover is the first time in the Energon universe that CoverGirl has gotten a cover all to herself as the hero character. I've always liked Brett Booth's work. Backlash and I guess going back to Wildcats Zero, I've always been aware of him as someone who draws very much in the Jim Lee mold. And I do think that Brett Booth's work benefits, and he's been doing a bunch of Spawn the last year. I do think Brett Booth's work benefits from a heavier approach to inking, because in that very sort of Jim Lee 90s style, Booth draws a lot of detail with sort of every movement of his pencil. So it can be on the knuckles of fingers, it can be in the neck muscles, it can be in hair, it can be every stitch and wrinkle and stress on someone's pants. And there's I'm not going to call it busyness because that sounds derogatory, but there's an active quality that I think works for many aspects of a cover like this. I think the hair can be very active and detailed. I think CoverGirl's weapon can be very active and detailed. I like seeing some of the details in this elevator shaft, but sort of the more detail that happens in a cover like this, the more my eye gets a little bit lost and doesn't know where to slow down and rest. And an inker who inks sort of less detail and does sort of thicker lines in a more 60s 70s style, but that's not what you get when you hire Brett Booth, and that's not how he pencils, and that's not how his pencils as are sort of want to be inked. So what I like about this also with the colors are very active. There's a lot of rendering. This looks like an image cover from the 90s. And I don't just mean 90, 93, 94. I mean the whole 90s. And even though there have been eras of G.I. Joe that have been, more or less influenced by that, we have so rarely gotten what you could call just sort of a straightforward image cover in the image style by an image artist in terms of detail and color. So not my favorite cover, but I do appreciate for all of the differences that it brings. One last thing I'll say about the color in terms of its sort of activity, a lot of highlights and a lot of glow effects. It's Brett Booth is an artist who I've always sort of wondered what would it look like if he did G.I. Joe, and I can sort of imagine it, and now it's kind of in front of me.
And on Twitter, where he shared this image, someone asked, "Any chance we might see you on Interiors sometime?" And he said in reply, "Always a possibility." So never know.
Okay, here we go. I'm just going to start with the colors. I have been hoping that Dave McCaig, one of my favorite artists, color artists in comics, I have been hoping for 10 years that somehow he would color G.I. Joe. And this was never going to happen because I don't know that he's expensive. I think he's too expensive for IDW. IDW, maybe would shell out a little bit more money for covers, but whatever the economics of it are, McCaig, I first noticed him when he colored some Darth Maul comics for Dark Horse in the early 2000s. And then he digitally painted some really pretty Green Lantern covers over Ivan Reis right after the Sinestro War arc during the about 2 years into Jeff Johns' Green Lantern. The story is called Secret Origin. And McCaig always chooses a limited palette. I don't mean 3 or 4 colors, but what I mean is he doesn't render like crazy, and he repeats colors over and over and over throughout his covers and throughout his panels. And if you want a good example of this, pick up any issue of The Walking Dead Deluxe, where any one scene is sort of only made up of like the same 8 or 12 colors, and sort of one person's complexion and the shade is the next person's complexion and shade. And if one person has, a gray shirt and blue jeans and someone else has blue jeans, it's the same 2 blues. And yet, very subtly, he creates activity and separates elements with a very, very refined sense of separating warm and cool, more than almost any other color artist I can think of in comics. Let's talk about the other artists on this. This is penciled by David Finch and inked by Danny Miki. And this is just the villains. So it's Cobra Commander and Destro and Chameleon and Mercer and the twins and Scrap Iron, and they're standing on mechanical rubble that doesn't look like Transformers. It looks like just regular aircraft stuff. We see some cockpit, though. Maybe it's Starscream's. Maybe it's Starscream's
transform into planes.
Right. Maybe it's Starscream's chest. Right. But what I mean is, we don't see an Autobot or Decepticon symbol. We don't see a hand, and we don't see any clearly recognizable parts of a Transformer. Okay. I'm going to get back to David Finch I'm going to get back to Dave McCaig in a moment, because let's talk for another 4.5 hours. Pencil artist here, David Finch. His work to me has always been very much in the Mark Silvestri school. His characters are very sculptural, and they always look like they're carved from stone, which is cool. I think sometimes that's a bit much for soft things like hair and fabric, but he sure draws the heck out of everything that he draws. And there is a severity to his characters' faces, right? Sort of every character is concentrating. Mean characters, evil characters are particularly mean and evil. This is how he draws eyes and cheekbones and chins. And so what's cool about this is that this is the counterpoint to the Jerome Opeña B cover. That was all the heroes, and here's all the villains, right? And that was the cover which has all the muted colors, and this is the cover that's got the crazy middle bright orange. And something about this, if you look at the Marvel covers from the 80s, occasionally you'd get a cover that was just all yellow, right? The background's all yellow or all red, right? Issue number 1. And those are colors you don't see as much on covers nowadays. And so something about this cover sort of sideways to me says old fashioned, because it is a limited approach, right? But look at the twins. They are knocked back. There is orange mixed in. And then and the twin who is furthest back has even more orange. And then the girder behind him has even more yellow and orange. So McCaig is pulling Cobra Commander forward by putting his bright blue and the blue cockpit stuff that he's standing on, blue mixed with some red. Cobra Commander is immediately separated from everyone else because none of them have blue in them. And the blue of Scrap Iron, Mercer, Tomax, and Zaymot has been turned into gray or a very dull purple. And yet, to give some sense of space, it's not a pure orange in the background, because if you look around Chameleon's legs, the orange does grade down to a middle orange and a yellow. And then the highlights around Cobra Commander really make him pop. I hope, and Skybound has been very smart in hiring Dave McCaig to color a lot of stuff. He's colored the new Invincible covers for the quote new edition softcover collections, which are the smaller ones, and of course he's been doing now 100 issues of The Walking Dead Deluxe. I hope somehow Dave McCaig can color some more G.I. Joe work in the future. Cover E is drawn and colored by Lee Bermejo. This made a little bit of a splash when it showed up on the Talking Joe Facebook page. This is Cobra Commander, head and shoulders and gloved hand, reaching toward us, rushing forward. His left hand is taking up the bottom third of the cover. The texture and the stitching, the seams of his glove are photorealistic. In his metal mask, there's a reflection of that same outstretched arm, but the rest of this silver faceplate is taken up by Duke, who is jumping and lunging and swinging to punch. So we are Duke in this cover. And behind Duke, still reflected in this very dramatic faceplate, is an orangey red fireball of explosions. A little bit of the negative space behind Cobra Commander's battle mask on the top third of the cover is given over to his cape, right, Mark?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not his arm. That's not his like leg. And just
I
a
think
little
it's sort of swirling behind like that.
Okay. And a little smidge of negative space is the sort of orangey, out of focus sky well in the distance behind Cobra Commander. This cover is really striking because you are immediately taken by the intensity of it, the intensity of the heat because of all the reds and oranges, the intensity, the sharpness of Bermejo's technique, right? When he draws things, they look like they've been sort of captured on film. But it never feels like he's tracing photographs. It never feels like he's slavishly referring to photographs. But the fabric folds and the facial anatomy of his characters, in this case, just the precision of Cobra Commander's battle mask and helmet. His stuff, whether it's Batman or Lex Luthor or what was that book he did for Vertigo, Suiciders, and its sequel Suiciders LA, his stuff always looks real in a way that any kind of simplified or abstracted or cartooned comic art doesn't sort of try to or need to. And there is a severity to Bermejo's work which is exciting and thrilling when it's a gripping character like Batman or the Joker, and since we have never seen it for G.I. Joe, it's quite shocking and exciting here.
Yeah, this is like an instantly iconic cover. It's sort of one of those ones that really is impactful, and sort of is going to instantly be recognizable and sort of be put up in in your top 10 lists. I think almost it's a great cover, and if the other covers in the series weren't quite so strong, it would be an easy winner. But there's I think there's some competition there.
If Skybound made posters, this should be a poster.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we have something a little bit more in the G.I. Joe tradition with cover F by Sozomaika.
So this is the Baroness in her G.I. Joe uniform that somewhat refers to her original Cobra Baroness uniform, in that it's sort of body armor and it's sexy and there's some black, and yet she's got a lot of silver elements and a blue star. There is no background here. The background is a sort of a comp of the image itself, but blown up and then turned to red and orange. So you see this sort of echo of her face and shoulder and chest behind her, but enlarged. And if you sort of squint, you don't see the second image of her. She's adjusting her glasses. I'm not wowed by this cover for a couple of reasons. Mark already hinted at what I think we're reacting to in its initial glimpse, is that we have seen many covers by artists, some who've done a lot of G.I. Joe and some who haven't. Sometimes these are regular covers, sometimes variants, sometimes retailer exclusives, of the Baroness being attractive and just standing there, and sometimes she's sort of accentuating, her butt or her hips or her curves or her breasts. Sometimes she's also holding a weapon or in front of a wall with some bullet holes in it. I think my main, even though it's great to have the Baroness and it's great to have sexy drawings of the Baroness, she's such a cool, dangerous and interesting and historic G.I. Joe character that when that's all that you get for her, or that's so much what you get for her of covers, and particularly when there's no additional story or sort of prop element to a sexy Baroness cover, it diminishes the character and it makes the cover itself less interesting. So what I'm reacting to is, it's another Baroness cover where it's just the Baroness. But what I'm also reacting to is, I don't think the line work here this doesn't read to me as a finished cover. I know that in the last, 20, 30 years, all sorts of artists in comics, whether they're drawing with traditional tools or digitally, and as editors have gotten, more open-minded and more different kinds of artists have come to comics, that the range of what is sort of appropriate for comic book art in America has expanded, and that's great. And I like a lot of sketchy artists and a lot of artists whose work is less refined or you might consider unfinished. But just actually looking at the line on the edge of her arm where her hand is moving up to her glasses, that's not a very clean line. It's, it sort of feels like 85% finished pencils that were darkened. The star on her chest is very slightly asymmetrical. And then to have sort of no additional background, I don't need a drawing there just to prove that the artist spent more time on it. But this cover feels sort of conceptually unfinished, in addition to, for issue number 1, right? And then on top of it, that it's just the Baroness, standing there. It's not like she's standing on a Transformer's arm and she's holding like a giant lug nut, and we go, oh, she's clever. She conquered this Autobot, or she disassembled this Decepticon. It's just a pinup, and covers. It certainly grabs your attention because of the, because of the color treatment, but does not wow me. All right, cover G by Jenny Frison, who has been doing a lot of covers here and there for different publishers for the last few years. And I think once again, Mark, first G.I. Joe work.
I believe so. Yeah.
So here's Chameleon, and correct me if I'm wrong here. What we're seeing on screen right now has no logo, but cover G will have a logo, but then there's another variant which doesn't have the logo. Same image.
Let's see.
Or this one's going to have a logo, and then there's also one that's going to be foil, which will have
exactly.
The logo.
Yes. Okay. So there is cover Q, which is a foil variant of this cover. The image that has been shared of this particular cover is identical to the Q without the logo. So the only difference is the foil treatment.
Okay.
As far as I can understand. Okay,
so we don't know definitively if cover G is logo-less or logo-full.
From the guides that we've seen, including the
inside front cover from Skybound.
Yeah, including that guide that Skybound issued. They're shown as the same, so that this one doesn't have a logo.
Okay. All right. Based on the composition, there's not a lot of room for. Okay.
No, it'd have to be behind her head, wouldn't it?
Right. You'd lose a lot of the logo. Frison's artwork has always struck me as a little delicate. Her line work is always clean and precise, and there is a lightness to her characters. She often draws female characters, and I guess a way, if you don't know what I'm talking about or aren't looking at the image to imagine this, is that her approach is in many ways distinct from Lee Bermejo's, where characters they look weathered and big and tough and tired, and they have leathery skin and they're sweaty and they're all of these textures, and it's always sort of hot out. And her characters look I do not say this in a negative way. This take on Chameleon here looks a little bit like she put on her costume and has shown up for a photograph, which in this case I like a lot. Partly because we haven't seen, this is a new character, right? This is a reused name, but this is a new character, right? This is a slightly reused character from an old episode of Transformers, but effectively for the Energon universe in the world of G.I. Joe, this is a new character. And she has a very cool costume. We haven't gotten to see it much, right? She's on the cover of Destro 4, and she's on the cover that we've previously seen of 2 of these G.I. Joe covers. But this is the first time she's gotten an image all to herself, and where the color treatment is just about normal, right? Her skin is a little bit highlighted. There's a lot of sort of every color mixed into the darkest parts of her armor and her tunic, but the red is really popping as a deep blood red, and the precision that Frison has drawn Chameleon's weapon is really satisfying, and the lighting on it is really satisfying, right? So here's one more contrast. The things about the previous cover of the Baroness that disappointed me, where it didn't feel technically finished, the lack of background felt like not the right call. She's just standing there and it's not satisfying, right? Here, because of the subtle expression that Chameleon is making, the slight twist to her pose, the fact that she's got her weapon, and the really, really sort of sensuous and technically finished and satisfying sort of line work and color treatment, sort of all the things about the previous cover that don't click for me, which seem similar here, do click for me here. This cover will really pop on a shelf. And if you're an editor and you're gonna have a attractive woman in a tight costume cover, but it's not going to be exploitive or sort of betray the brand, here's a good example.
Yeah, and to call out on this cover, you can see on her eyes the photochromia, the different coloured eyes that she's got as part of her, I guess, design or character. And what struck me as well was I was thinking about that original Chameleon as being the Baroness, essentially a reissue of the Baroness. But in that version of the Baroness, she had all of these sort of red detailing on her costume, including kind of the red ribbing on the chest, and it sounded like as Marco Ferrari was describing the kind of the origins, that Baroness substitute was a bit of the brief of like, here's a starting point. The chameleon was a similar analog to Baroness, and so I think that in the design, those kind of red ribbing highlights in the costume, the black and the red, have been picked up and sort of ported across into this new design.
Yeah.
Okie. Speaking of the Baroness,
okay.
Next up,
this is cover H. This is the 1 in 10 retailer. Cover H. This is the 1 in 10 ratio incentive. This is drawn and colored by David Nakayama. He is known for covers for Marvel and DC, often drawing female characters. Often they are drawn in a little bit of a peppy, very, very slightly, maybe just slightly, or maybe just, I wouldn't say it's full cheesecake, but there is an element of cheesecake, which is sort of 1950s pinup art style to his characters. This is
good
the
girl,
first,
maybe.
Good girl art. This is the first of 4 connecting covers, which will all feature women. So here's Baroness. She's got her weapon. She's adjusting her earpiece. She's smiling, which is interesting because, so here's a battle scene that's not a literal battle scene, because the Baroness probably wouldn't be looking at us and smiling and not paying attention to the battle during a battle scene when there are, rifle blasts going right past her. So this is definitely one of those covers that's an illustration for our benefit and an exaggeration of a moment or a hypothetical moment. Nakayama is, he draws a lot of highlights on his characters' costumes, and he uses a lot of white for them. So metals and fabrics, or maybe it's PVC, like a plastic fabric, are often sort of the shiniest they can be. And he draws his characters' faces with a bit of cartoony youthfulness, whether they are younger characters like, Batgirl or Robin or Spider-Gwen, or adults like, the Baroness. And his first G.I. Joe work, right?
I think so. Yep.
Okay. And then since I wasn't specific, the battle scene is a shot up, broken down brick wall behind her. And the approach is more painterly in the background and more less rendered, sort of, how would I say this? The background looks photo referenced and more painted and detailed, and the characters pop a little bit more with sort of fewer colors and less texturing. Okay. Jeff Spokes, cover I, the 1 in 25 incentive. As I've said in previous episodes, Spokes' work very much makes me think of Ryan Sook and, to a lesser extent, Adam Hughes. Spokes always draws his characters with a subtly thicker total outline. So here's Cover Girl walking quickly toward us with that 1982 Hasbro toy packaging, Hector Garrido style painted explosion background. This is in line with other 1 in 25 covers we've seen for all 4 of the previous G.I. Joe miniseries on all 5 issues of each.
I have a feeling this might be the third, or maybe even more, the third. Well, certainly not the first exploding background cover that Spokes has done for Skybound.
Yeah. Did he? Who else did he? I
think it might have been
Jinx.
And maybe Major Blood might have been him as well.
Okay. Yes, not his first G.I. Joe work, but this year new to G.I. Joe. Not a lot of rendering on the character, so there's a real distinction between the color treatment of the character here and this very old-fashioned paint treatment in the background. And I don't know whether this is a digital approximation or a scan of actual paint on board, but you can sure see the brushstrokes and sort of the blobs of paint behind her that Skybound has been using for these. And it's a really nice, she pops really nicely. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to do a fact correction for myself. So it was Destro number 2, which had Tomax on it, and Scarlet number 3 with Jinx were his previous couple.
Okay.
And next up,
EJ Sue.
There we go.
EJ Sue, everyone, was drawing Transformers fan art before IDW got the Transformers license, and then was hired to draw the first and third and fourth IDW Transformers miniseries.
And Tim, before that, he was working on G.I. Joe versus Transformers for Devil's Due.
Right.
So this is the third licensor that he is working with, covering the Hasbro Energon brands.
So
Devil's Due, IDW, and now Skybound.
So here is a schematic. What's the retailer? Or what's the variant? Sorry, what's the ratio on this one? This is the one in 50. So here's the Hiss tank drawn isometrically, and then also in blueprint form behind it, side, top, and front, with a bunch of stats on the bottom, and then the treatment is blue paper with white lines. And EJ Sue has previously worked with Robert Kirkman because he drew the Tech Jacket miniseries.
Right.
And did he also draw one of the 2 Super Patriot miniseries?
I don't know.
Maybe someone will correct me in the comments. And EJ Sue draws great robots and technical stuff, but also, thinking back to his Transformers miniseries, great people. And he's someone who you might think to put him on Transformers in the Energon universe, although Skybound seems interested in not reusing artists from the past. I would love to see this guy draw G.I. Joe. This is a sharp cover. I do appreciate the nod to the vehicles, because that's sort of 2/3 of what G.I. Joe was by volume. At the same time, as a cover, I can see this appealing to a more limited readership, because it's not a story element, it's not a cool character, there's not an explosion. It's not like Ron Wagner's cover with the Rolling Thunder and the what's the stealth called? The Phantom. It's not an action cover with a vehicle, but it does historically absolutely connect to G.I. Joe, because of course in the 80s and early 90s the vehicles came with blueprints.
Very good. And yeah, there's a sort of a thematic kind of trend with these blueprints. There's a couple of other blueprint covers coming, one of which is a Starscream blueprint cover for the Transformers book.
Is that
also from EJ Sue?
Oh, neat. Oh yeah. It's good to see EJ Sue draw a Cybertronian again. It's been too long. And he is both drawing and coloring here. And at the end of his IDW Transformers work, the final miniseries he did, which had 2 titles, it was 4 Spotlight specials, but it was also the final TION miniseries after Infiltration and something, and then something, and the final one was Revelation. So he drew and colored the covers, and then he came back and drew and also colored one final spotlight. I want to say it was Prowl, and maybe did a fill-in. Anyway, this guy was born to draw Transformers. Okay, John Boy Myers is drawing the 1 in 100 ratio variant. This one has a shiny foil treatment to it, and this matches the similar 1 in 100 Myers covers for the 4 miniseries. Myers' work is very much now. I think it took me this long to finally crystallize it, because it's like half Todd McFarlane and half Joe Madureira, or maybe it's 30% Todd McFarlane and 70% Joe Madureira.
Well, a bit of J. Scott Campbell in there as well.
Okay, yeah. All right, so here is what's the new guy's name?
Risk, I want to say.
Risk, Link, Hook.
You said
Puck.
Link, and I corrected it to Link to
Puck.
Risk, didn't I? Yeah.
Vine. Okay. It's Risk. He's got that old-fashioned
Winchester. Rifle.
Winchester. John Boy Myers, when he draws G.I. Joe characters, he loads them up with extra gear. He did this on the cover to IDW's G.I. Joe #0, the very first G.I. Joe comic book that IDW published, where Myers drew regular Duke parachuting, but with lots of extra stuff on him. And then he also did it on his classic G.I. Joe covers. I think he did the covers to like classic 13 and 14 and 15. And so here are Risk and also the Baroness in their regular costumes, but with extra grenades and straps and ammo belts and bits. So there's a whole bunch of yellow and orange going on as these two characters are standing amidst the fiery remains of some half-destroyed bats, and then something chunky in the background has a Cobra insignia on it. There's smoke and fire. You almost miss it, but behind the logo are 5 or 6 slightly out of focus helicopters. So,
oh yeah,
there's a really strong diagonal to this, which Myers used for I think 3 out of the 4 previous 1 in 100 covers, and each one had a very strong, modern comics, very busy rendered coloring approach. And it's not what I would choose, but he sure knows how to do it well. And the fact that besides these two characters and a little bit of that bat in the foreground, everything else is a variation of yellow, orange, tan. It is not overpowering. Also, I haven't been calling out the logos at all, but I just want to call out just on this one. The G.I. Joe logo is aqua, and it really stands out nicely against that yellow, and also picks up the 3 bits of blue aqua on the Baroness's costume. Yeah. This will have a different effect when you hold the comic in front of you. It will not be as reflective because of the foil treatment. If this was a regular cover on, sort of a normal glossy cover stock, it would be extra bright. These colors are going to be a little bit more muted with that sort of silvery, shiny finish. Tom Reilly designs for Risk with design layout by Andres Juarez, making use of various elements that Reilly has drawn. This gets the 1 in 250 ratio cover. This is going to be on cardstock. So it's Risk, not holding weapons, not in an action pose, just in a sort of model sheet, official handbook of the Marvel Universe, standing there pose so that other artists know how to draw this character. His hand is up, showing you his sort of partial gauntlets. And then the background looks like a topographical map because it's all in blue. It makes me think of the water, but maybe it's just, cool nighttime computer screen stuff of the land. And then there's some text and a little bit for his head and a little bit for his logo or tattoo, and then a little bit for his weapon. this is if you're trying to come up with ideas for a lot of variety when you're doing 19 or 47 variant covers, this is a fun one. I do think like the His Tank blueprint cover, I think people who really want rarer variant covers might want this. This is not a cover that jumps out the way that him standing there with the Baroness amidst a bunch of yellow and orange fire, or standing on some, dead Transformers does. I do like it, and I appreciate that, Tom Reilly, for being the series artist, again gets the A cover and then a couple more.
And I guess might be particularly appealing if people like the fact that it's this introduction of this new character, Risk, and it's sort of a port across of one of the designs that he did, which he's done for essentially all of his redesigns of the characters that appear in G.I. Joe 1. And I think they've been shared online, and I think they also appear in one or two of the ash cans that have been made available. He's talked about this guy Risk as, being somewhat John Wick inspired in terms of, he's in a suit, and that is kind of quite different to most of the G.I. Joe designs, that we don't really have any other G.I. Joes who've been in a suit like that, or outside of a military uniform, with the exception of maybe Duke in the Devil's Due era.
Didn't Colonel Courage have a tie? Didn't he have a
He
button-up
did
shirt
have
and a tie?
But it wasn't a suit, though. It was just a dorky looking tie.
Sculpted so small you kind of don't see it. So Mark,
and you can see the details on the cover. They talk with the wording that he's got an eagle tattoo across his upper back. He's got a missing partial left pinky finger, so that's the hand that he's holding up here. He's missing his pinky, and he's got a scar above his right eye, and he's got this distinctive weapon, nickname Moneymaker. It is a customized lever action rifle that very much looks like a Winchester gold lever action rifle.
Now, before I say to myself, wait a minute, that's not a realistic weapon for a G.I. Joe character to use, I'll remind myself that several of the action figures from the 82 to 94 line came with weapons like 1985 Shipwreck, which you would definitely not take into battle against Cobra with its tanks and death robots. Mark, remind me here, there have been 4 1 in 250 ratio covers so far for the first issues of those 4 miniseries. Were those the David Mack painted covers? You know what?
I don't know. It might have been that his was the 1 in 500.
Hold on, I'll just.
I suspect that they're keeping to the 1 in 250. Oh, actually,
wait! I can do this. I'm on the Diamond website. Yes, they are. Yes, they were. Okay.
David Mack.
Yes. So this is creating a question for me. Issue 2 of G.I. Joe. Okay, so all the comics so far at the 1 in 25 ratio level have had a single character with that painted explosion background from the 1982 packaging, toy packaging. Mm-hmm. Issue 2 of G.I. Joe is not going to have a 1 in 250 ratio variant. And so I wonder when we might see another Tom Reilly and Julian Juarez. What's his name? Who's the designer?
Andre Juarez,
excuse me. Cover. It's because Skybound seems to like to keep some consistency in terms of tiers. The 1 in 25 cover styling didn't suddenly move up or down for this next series. And now that Skybound has introduced this version of a variant cover with this design take, I think it would whet the appetite of variant cover collectors.
Yeah, and it perhaps it might make for good, they've got a few of these designs up their sleeves that they've, created and not really used in a big way. So perhaps, they've got some ammunition for maybe some second prints or something like that along the lines. That would make an awful lot of sense to me if we saw a second print with some of these designs that could then be, issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, and so on. So
maybe Jason Howard is too busy drawing Transformers to do those second print covers with a single character in front of a single logo with a white background.
Yeah.
All right. What's our next cover?
So our next cover is one that we've seen before in a different format.
All right. This is the one in 500. Your comic book store or online store, for every 500 copies, and let me assure you, plenty of comic book stores are not ordering that many. For every 500 copies of G.I. Joe 1 covers, I think it's A through G and N through R, can order one of these. This is David Finch's cover just from pencils. I think pencils only covers are really fun. I think they work best when they are ratio incentives, because I think your average comic book store browser might sort of be confused by artwork that's not colored, much less not inked. And so I do like seeing this. I also sort of, I've gone back and forth, like, oh, should the 1 in 500 have been like another aspirational artist? You know, it's like that really famous guy who's never drawn G.I. Joe, or that really famous guy who's only drawn G.I. Joe once or twice. And the only way to get his cover is 500 other copies. Or is that sort of too exclusive and exclusionary and unfair in finger quotes? And well, okay, we'll use a different version of some art that you've already seen. So if you can't get this one, you still get a chance to get a version of this cover.
And cynically, it's also 2 for the price of 1 if you're commissioning his art, that you can pay for it once and use it twice.
Although I do think I do think they have to pay David Finch
a usage fee, right?
Yeah, twice, but not the full twice.
And it jogged my memory as well that we were told previously that David Finch's art did feature in the sort of the proposal pitch document that Skybound had prepared for Hasbro when pitching for the license. But presumably not this.
Yes, that is not artwork. That is not artwork that we know has been made public, and Mark and I have not seen it.
Exactly.
We just know that it exists.
Exactly. There is even earlier David Finch artwork out there in the ether that hopefully one day we might see. Possibly the kind of thing they might put in the back of one of the deluxe editions that they're putting out. Hopefully we're not going to talk about this one for half an hour.
Cover N is a blank sketch cover. It's got a little G.I. Joe star and stripes logo on the top left instead of the 4 heads. And it'll be on a nice matte white paper that you can bring to an artist to draw on. And you should definitely come to Hub Comics on Saturday. That's the comic book store that I own and operate. I'm going to go there right after I record this episode. It is in Somerville, Massachusetts. Somerville borders Cambridge and Boston. And for 4 hours on the Saturday after G.I. Joe issue number 1 debuts, artist Tom Reilly will be at Hub Comics signing G.I. Joe number 1 and also the 5 issues Duke and also the Duke's collection. And you should come to my store and buy stuff and meet him. It'll be great. Okay, and then maybe you'll buy the one of these blank sketch covers, and maybe he'll. I don't know how long the line will be. I don't know if Mr. Reilly will be drawing a lot for a lot of people or just signing. But the only way to know is to come and find out. Cover O is similarly a white blank sketch cover. It's a thick matte white stock, and instead of a little G.I. Joe logo on the top left, there's a little Cobra logo. Next
is a foil version of the cover A by Tom Reilly. So it's a foil cardstock version, and I'm not seeing a ratio associated with this. So is it open to order this?
Yes. So the 2 previous, so the open to order, the unlimited ones that your comic book store can order as many as it wants are covers A through G. That's including the Jenny Frison one of Chameleon, and then N through. I'm looking at the Diamond website right now. N through.
H through to N. No, H through to M.
Sorry, what's H?
H is the 1 in 10, David Nakayama.
That one.
The
That one.
M is.
So to qualify for any of the ratio ones, you can order as many as you want of the non-ratio ones. So that includes the blank ones, this wraparound foil one, and our next couple. Sorry, did I step over you?
No, that's all right. So this one will be quite exciting, I think, in the foil.
This one is $1 more.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This one is $5.99.
Yeah, perhaps Tim, you can put one aside, a signed copy of this foil one for me, if you're able to remember. That would be nice.
I will do my best.
Next up is...
All right, so now we have a repeat of the Jenny Frison, what was cover G. Now it's shiny foil and on a thicker stock. Next. This one is unusual. This one is a die-cut Cobra Commander mask. It's so the cover stock has to be thicker for the part that's cut and removed. So it's cardstock, but it's also foil. And Mark, what does this cover treatment remind you of? This composition?
I know that there's been previous sort of like comics with heads like this that sort of in this sort of style, but I if you're trying to make me think of something specific, I'm struggling.
In 2014, in the Batman titles, 2 years into the New 52, there was a storyline called Death of the Family, and Greg Capullo was drawing the regular monthly Batman book. This was when Scott Snyder was drawing it. So there was a cover with a similar treatment here with the Joker's face. This is the version of the Joker where the skin of his face had been cut off. Gross. And Greg Capullo also drew covers that month, I think, for Batgirl and Nightwing, and maybe one other book, maybe also Batman and Robin, because those were tie-ins. And then volume 3 of the New 52's Batman hardcover, reused that image of the Joker and had an acetate dust jacket. So those weren't die cut, but the face close up cropped this way with a white background was very similar. I can't actually tell based on this sort of 2D graphical approximation what is sort of cut, because a die cut cover, they're basically two covers. There's the outer cover, and then you open it, and something that you could see through is now fully revealed. So how's this going to work, Mark?
I think, because I've heard the writer Joshua Williamson talking about this, I think this might have originated as his idea, that essentially it's a Cobra Commander mask on the cover, which you can remove, leaving, I think, the white behind, and then you can sort of hold it up to your face like it's a Cobra Commander mirrored, foil card mask. Is my understanding. It's quite different, quite exciting kind of cover. Should be a lot of fun.
I didn't say it aloud, but can you just put the lower third back on? This is drawn by Andrea Milana, and with design by Andres Juarez. Andrea Milana, of course, drew the Cobra Commander miniseries, one of the covers for Destro 1 and all of issue 3 of Destro. So is an artist very associated with this character. All right, next cover.
I was just going to say, I was trying to think of covers that had masks in them. One of them was the Mask Returns from Dark Horse back in 1992. That was.
Okay.
Which came with a mask in the middle. Okay, so we've moved away from the sort of normal retailer exclusives into the somewhat, put out there by Skybound exclusives.
Okay, so this generally, listeners, viewers, I talk about the regular covers. Mark talks about the retailer exclusives. I'm going to talk about this one because up until 2 weeks ago, we didn't know it existed. And I just happened to be on the Diamond website. and I saw that there was a cover which hadn't previously been announced, which all of a sudden was there. So this is it is open to order, which means stores can order as many as they want. But in the solicitation, it says quantities limited, allocations may occur. So I don't know if every store orders too many, Diamond's going to do math and sort of proportionately ration to everyone. So I don't know, if your store orders 5, maybe you get 4, maybe you get 1. If a store orders 5,000 and they only printed 5,000, I don't know what the numbers are. So this is the wraparound cover drawn by Tom Reilly, but no colors, and it has a very small previews exclusive tag on the back. I ordered this for my store. This one has a cover price of
in the image it says $4.99.
The suggested retailer's price, the manufacturer's suggested retail price is $10.
Oh, right.
So I know that if we get any at my store, we are not selling this for cover, because this cost us more than the normal wholesale price.
Okay.
It's very cool to see Tom Reilly's inking. His thick to thin line work is awesome. And Mark, how many retailer exclusives, or what are your favorites?
well, the first one again is less of a retailer exclusive. It's a Skybound exclusive that they've got 2 connecting foil variants by Andre Lima Araujo, which has got they've got a G.I. Joe cover, and then they have got a connecting Cobra cover. So on the left are the Cobras, Mercer, Tomax, let's say, Chameleon, Scrap Iron, Destro, Cobra Commander, all in their new designs.
I think I see a scar.
Is it? Yeah, maybe it is a scar. I was thinking it's a lot of people draw lines for cheekbones. Yeah, okay. Maybe that is a scar. You're probably right.
By now we should know which way Tom Max's red sash faces, and I will
never remember.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'll never.
I've
know.
remembered which one has the scar, but beyond that, I think it's asking too much of me. So
there are 3 covers here.
There is 2 covers that connect, and the image I am showing is the connecting image without logo, which is not itself a cover, but makes for a more interesting image in itself. So yeah, quite a nice cover. I don't know if it's as exciting as the cover A, and I think all of that green is a little bit pasty.
It
sort of
definitely
saps it a little bit.
It definitely looks different than other. I mean, how many times have we seen a green, G.I. Joe 52 from Marvel by Mike Zeck? We don't see a lot of green. No, sorry, not 52, 53. Quick Kick fighting Storm Shadow, 53, right? Anyway, this cover definitely, if you squint, this definitely sticks out from all the other ones.
And there is then a further variation on this one, which was just announced at time of recording the previous day. I think this was announced on the 25th of October. After Greg had made his most recent update to his list. So this is available from the Skybound Insider website, which is their kind of loyalty scheme. And if you collect points via purchases or via doing quizzes or joining in with activities, then you'll get points. And if you get enough for a platinum level, which is, I believe, 200,000 points, then you can unlock and receive a physical copy of this cover, which is a black and white version of that Andre Lima Araujo cover that we were just talking about. And it's tricky. It's tricky to get 200,000 points because you'll get like maybe 500 for doing an activity. So that's a lot of activities or purchasing to build up that score. So I imagine this one will be in quite short supply, but perhaps maybe if they've printed more than is taken up, there might be other ways to find it down the line.
Some listeners or viewers may have gotten Skybound Insider points for signing up early for the Compendium Kickstarter campaign, which got you that first trading card, the Storm Shadow trading card by Andy Kubert. I have points for that. I don't think I will try and get any more points, but good luck to everyone, and I hope it's more fun than frustrating.
Absolutely. So that is the Skybound proper covers. Let's move on to the retailer covers with the first one I've selected is this one, which is the Mike Mayhew Baroness cover, which is not the first time that he has drawn this specific character, and it being a retailer exclusive featuring the Baroness, I think it's time to play a jingle.
Why are there so many covers of Baroness? 'Cause she's on the other side. Cobra are villains, my only conclusion. The costume makes us wide-eyed. So we've been shown, and some people think she is fit, though it is wrong blatantly. Someday we'll complete it, the cover collection, the Baroness, her leather, and me.
Wow. Wow. All right, so just to be clear, we are looking at a retailer exclusive. In that song, some of those covers were regular covers.
And we had a little montage of various Baroness covers from the past, some of which were retailer exclusives, and some of which I think were even Mike Mayhew covers. I think this might be the third time that he's returning to the Baroness. That I think he had a cover or two in the IDW era. He's done it for the ARA Skybound retailer variant, and now he's he's putting a twist on the new Skybound Baroness design. And I can't complain too much about this particular cover because in terms of doing this and doing it well, Mike Mayhew is an expert, and he is just about as good as you get. So this one is Mike Mayhew's web store variant. So you can head on over to his website if you want this one. He's a dab hand now at G.I. Joe artist exclusive web store variants. I will click over to the next cover in our Baroness theme. So this one is 616 Comics Ivan Tao foil Virgin variant. This is the Baroness in her new costume against a sort of stylized, almost American flag. And there's a second version of this that is from no, there's a second version of this also from
same cover,
same
different
artist,
different background.
Yes, two takes by Ivan Tao on this same image with a different background. The second one, which features that sort of blue star the sort of on the chest design of this new one. The next one in our Baroness special is Midtown Comics, Ben Harvey, cardstock Virgin variant, no logo. It's quite a nice playful image. It's not the sort of normal sort of looking at us cheesecake, not a lot going on. She's sort of skipping along and sort of merrily flicking a grenade over her shoulder. So I think for what it is, this one's quite a lot of fun. Next up is Third Eye Comics. They've got two variants. This is the first of them. This is Ryan Gonzalez with the Baroness in a sort of cheeky chibi style. It's fun in terms of it being quite different to a typical G.I. Joe style. So at least it's got that going for it. That it's looking different to the regular G.I. Joe covers.
If you're just listening, there are hearts and a rainbow, and so it's not just chibi. It also feels very much like a 1980s, 3-ring binder cover or sticker book. If you flipped past this and you didn't actually catch what it was, you might just think it's a My Little Pony cover, which I say in a complimentary way.
And then we have next up, it is a reuse of the Sozomaika cover that is part of the regular release, but this one is a foil card variant of that same Baroness cover, the one that Tim was talking about as being a little bit sketchy.
And who is this one for?
This one was for KRS Comics and Eastside Comics. And then the next one is Clobbering Comics, Dan Panosian, featuring Baroness on the front of the cover. And then in the background, there is Chameleon in a Cobra tank. So Dan Panosian, I think this is his first published G.I. Joe work, but he is somewhat associated with the brand that he had pitched a sort of reinvention of G.I. Joe and for animated, which was never actually picked up. So he sort of does have an association with Joe, even if not one that actually have seen either publication or airing in terms of that animation work.
Just to point out a detail, this Cobra tank in the background, it's not a HISS tank, and it's not a specific Cobra tank. It's what you might call sort of a regular tank. It happens to have a Cobra person in it and two Cobra logos on it. And it's not even, blue or red or purple. It's a gray tank.
Next up, it's another double cover, front and back. This one is from multiple retailers: Crimson's Fable Studios, Comic Spot, Gabe's Cave, Pastime Comics, Crumb's World. It is a Peter Smith variant featuring a lineup of Joes on the front, Baroness, Rock and Roll, Cover Girl, and on the back it is Cobra Commander, Destro, and Chameleon. You can see the logos on the back there. They've got Comic Spot and Gabe's Cave. This is a cool one. We're sort of moving beyond the Baroness covers here now. So this next up is Impulse Creations Miko Suyam Virgin variant. I think this isn't the first work from him for Skybound, if I'm remembering correctly. I think we talked about him doing something else for one of the other minis.
Did he? I think he also did some IDW. I think he did some variants for the Snake Eyes Dead game.
Okay.
Because he did some Ninja Turtles Last Ronin variant covers, and I do associate his name with G.I. Joe a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. Dead game, definitely.
So this one
Okay.
is CoverGirl and Chameleon battling, having just smashed through some glass. But then there are all
Yeah.
these larger shards of glass where various Joe and Cobra commanders have little portraits, sort of seeing what's happening, and the whole background is sort of a Twizzler candy red.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites, I think, of the retailer variants. The line art there, just shared for fun, that isn't actually a published cover. Then we have the second of the Third Eye Comics exclusives. This is from Alexis Zirit. It is a Virgin variant of Destro with somewhat of a logo at the top that says Iron Grenadiers. Puts me in mind a little bit of the work of Tom Scioli, who did the G.I. Joe versus Transformers series. It's sort of very flat
and
colors,
Jim Rugg.
very
Sorry.
almost like a sort of like a 70s or 80s kind of metal poster that you might have had back in the day. Quite sort of stylized poster-esque, I think.
This looks a little bit like high school student, spent 6 hours drawing in pencil in their notebook. Which I say as a compliment. This has that, sort of, like you said, like a metal poster for a show or an album.
Okay, and next up we have another front and back. This is for Epicos by Mayday Trip. It features the Joe team on the front, Stalker, Baroness, Covergirl, Duke with his hand held high. There's Vamp to the sides. The Mobat is on the back in the distance, and then there's also like an MMS and a Dragonfly, bombs exploding in the sky. Very much sort of evoking like early Joe brand art, which I'm sure you're much more knowledgeable than I am, Tim.
I mean, there's that mesa that, they could be on that, raising the flag altogether from the initial painted 82 art. But this also, is a comic book cover in a way that original, promo art was not.
Mm-hmm. Then this is a nice one. We have got San Francisco Fan Expo exclusive from Scott's Collectibles by Martin Simmons. So Martin Simmons, British artist. This comes in two flavors. A version of which has got a reflection of a Cobra logo and G.I. Joe logo. And the G.I. Joe masthead on the top, and then a Virgin variant with a skull reflected on the Cobra Commander's helmet. Martin Simmons doing a lot of cool work. I think he did some work on Dracula, published through Skybound relatively recently.
And draws and co-owns Department of Truth for Image with James Tynion.
And pop fact, Martin Simmons, up to this point, the only G.I. Joe work that I'm aware that he's drawn, it was a commission for me back in the day, which was an image of Destro. Let me call it up. So here we go. This was the commission that Martin did for me, probably best part of 10 years ago, at a comic convention where a Thought Bubble, where he did a Destro and wanted to play with the images of the ideas of reflection in his dome, similar to actually what he's doing here on this cover with Cobra Commander, where they're playing with reflections on his helmet. Pop fact: this was the second iteration of this version, this image. The first one he wasn't particularly happy with, so he made it into Dead Man instead, and then started again from scratch, and did the Destro. No. So here are the two images in a bit more detail, and then this next one is Deegan Punch Cause Syndicate Comics and Southern Comics Cartel exclusive. It sort of reminds me a little bit of a, I don't know, Capcom Versus type image. You've got sort of a jagged panel borders sort of splitting up this image with 4 pairs of Joe versus Cobras doing battle, Cover Girl and Chameleon, Duke and Cobra Commander, Mercer and Baroness, and Destro and the new character Risk. So it's nice. It's a fun sort of dynamic image, and they're also incorporating all of these new designs for the characters and the new character Risk. So that is available from Syndicate Comics. Next up, it is another Tyler Kirkham, who you might remember did some of the variants for the Destro miniseries. This is from CBNS, Gotham City Limit, Stronghold Collectibles. It's a foil Virgin variant featuring Cobra Commander on a gold throne. Then next up, we have TC Rocket's Jamie Sullivan variant. And Tim, have we got a surprise for you and the listeners? We've got Jamie Sullivan here right now. So let's talk to the man. And here he is. Welcome back to Talking Joe, Jamie Sullivan. It's a returning guest, which is always a delight, because it means it can't have been that bad the first time round. So.
I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. Very kind
so
of you.
For those of you who missed him the last time, we had a whole dedicated episode to the art of Jamie Sullivan, where he walked through his comics largely from the IDW era, where pretty much did more comic covers than anybody else. So he's a man that knows G.I. Joe comic covers for sure.
Jamie, tell us about drawing in your car.
Oh, I've done that before. I've had to do it before with deadlines, especially when I worked for IDW. When I worked for IDW doing the Joe covers, sometimes I would get a phone call from my editor saying, "Hey, we really need a variant cover for this issue." I'm like, "Okay, any thoughts on what you want?" He's all, whatever makes you happy. And then I'm like, "Okay, when do you need it by?" He's like, how about noon tomorrow? I'd be on the road somewhere, and I'd be like, yeah, let me see if I can find a FedEx to scan it when I'm done. And then, so there were a few covers that were done, in a car in a hotel room, and scanned it at FedEx and sent off to color. Yeah.
Are you using the steering wheel as a drawing board?
I am currently we're currently in Carlsbad, just outside of San Diego, for San Diego Comic Fest this morning. And so I am in the I'm in the parking lot in my lovely Nissan Murano. Enjoying the 75-degree weather here and the nice breeze.
There we go. So, broken out of the San Diego to give us the lowdown of kind of your experience with working on retailer variant covers for the Skybound era. So, one of the few artists thus far who has sort of had the experience of both IDW and Skybound, the lucky few. We've seen this one from you already, which is Destro. This cool blueprint cover of Destro, one of my favorites of the variants for the Destro series. Do you want to tell us about the experience initially of working on this one and how that came about?
So I was approached by Condemned Comics. They wanted, there's a lot of moving parts, especially with Skybound. They're very involved in the whole Void Rivals, Transformers, G.I. Joe lore, and mixing it all together. So when they approached me, Condemned Comics, he wanted Destro to be shown as what he really is, a weapons supplier. And initially, he also wanted me to have the twins featured on the cover, Tomax and Zaymot. Skybound, however, said Tomax and Zaymot could not be featured on the cover of the retailer exclusive, so that was kind of nixed early on. So in keeping with him as a weapon supplier, I thought it would be cool to put him in front of all of the Mars industry weapons that he's been responsible for, and do schematics of it and do a blueprint style. And so it was pretty quick. So I did like a really rough preliminary sketch, and Condemned Comics signed off on it. They loved it, and then they sent it to Skybound. Skybound just had a couple of notes about his costume, and sent it back, and then I got to drawing the final one. And the original art was actually 24 by 36. All of the schematics you see in the background, I drew by hand. And then when Andrew Crossley, my colorist, did it, obviously he inverted the colors and turned it into to blueprint. And they were really happy with it. Condemned Comics was really happy with it. A lot of the Destro issues, a lot of the Destro variants that came out didn't sell as well as I think a lot of the retailers had hoped, because at the exact same time, Skybound was doing their Kickstarter for their giant G.I. Joe compendium.
Mm-hmm.
And that was eating up a lot of the share of sales for G.I. Joe comics at the time.
And so there's a lot going on here in this background on the blueprints.
There's a lot.
You could have got away with an explosion background. That might have saved a little bit of time, perhaps. But that was all by hand? Was it done piece by piece and stitched together?
No, it was all. The whole thing was done as one piece. My long before I ever worked in the toy industry or the comic book industry, I wanted to be an architect, but there's a lot of math involved, and so I ended up not pursuing that and ended up getting my degree in marketing. But I have a drafting background, an architectural background, so drawing vehicles and mech and all that stuff comes really easy to me. So it was a lot of fun, though. It was really cool. The guys at Hasbro loved it.
Jamie, did you use technical pens? Did you use rapidographs?
No, I didn't use rapidographs. I used Molotow, which are very similar to rapidograph pens. They have 0.5 and 0.8 millimeter tips that work out really, really well for that, especially at that size. I use.
Are these refillable or disposable?
So some of them are refillable, some of them are disposable.
Okay.
It just depends on the ones that you get.
Okay. So for our listeners and viewers, rapidograph pens, technical pens are what architects and technical artists will use. They are famous for having a very consistent and straight line, but the pens themselves are finicky and require a lot of care. You have to clean them each time you use them, and
you do.
Like an air bubble can ruin the flow. And if you are used to just going to a CVS or an art supply store and buying sort of any pen or marker, this is not that.
Yeah.
So presumably in coming up with this cover, you were looking at the vehicles themselves and also the blueprints, or were you not looking at the blueprints? Can you talk about how you were taking views and including or taking out detail and information?
So, when a cover gets reduced, like if I didn't need to write words on it really, I didn't need to put like little blurbs or anything on it, because when it reduces, from the original size that it was drawn at, it you lose all of that. You wouldn't be able to see it, so you just see lines. So you just draw little lines that make it look like there was writing there or whatever. But yeah, so looking at some of the old schematics that you would find in the toys, helped a lot, um, for kind of like the layout and everything. But I also wanted to put on Destro's personal weapons there. Like you'll notice his wrist gauntlets are um, are in there as well. Um, so it was just like you want to, when you're doing it, you want to. It's not just going to be his tanks. It's not just going to be Rattlers. You're going to have like the whole gamut of everything. Guns, missiles, um, you know, uh, personal, weapons and stuff. Not just tanks and planes. So kind of a mix of everything in there.
Shall we get to the main event? So we're here today to talk about your
That one, yeah.
TC Rockets cover for the retail exclusive of issue number 1, featuring the Crimson Twins, Destro at the back, and a bat at the front. So again, can you tell us the story of how this comic came about? And one of the things that I'm interested in here as well is like the kind of initial direction or like brand kit that you were given to sort of run away with. Like the Crimson Twins here are a very specific Skybound Energon Universe design. So presumably you've been told to draw them like this or whatever.
So Jose at Skybound sent over. So first I was approached by TC Rockets. Steve Lurley and Chase Lurley from TC's Rockets in San Diego approached me about doing the cover. And Steve had this crazy idea. And there's I'm sure Aaron sent you a file of the image. We'll show you in a little bit. But Steve approached me with this kind of off the wall idea. And I was trying to wrap my head around how to do it. And I came up with an idea, and we pitched it to Skybound, and they came back and said, "No, you can't share what you're sharing on this cover. We're not there yet. We're not ready to. I'll just say we're not ready to include the Transformers on the G.I. Joe covers, even though the regular cover for number 1 has they're standing on like a Transformer, but that's beside the point. They said, you can't do that. So, Jose from Skybound sent me over turnarounds of character designs, what they want the bats to look like, what Tomax and Zaymot's new costumes look like, what Destro's costume looks like. And so I came up with this idea of a factory where Destro and Tomax and Zaymot are kind of like have a bat assembly line, and they're replacing weapons. They're like placing like larger weapons on the bat's arms, and that's kind of what you see here. And I wanted it to be like a Terminator feel. Like in my personal opinion, bats should be the scariest thing that Cobra has. Like, I know in the cartoon they were made for like cannon fodder. They were made so G.I. Joe, could shoot something and blow them up without them, hurting people in the cartoon. I get that's why they were made. But bats in my mind are like Terminators. They're like these unstoppable killing machines. And that's the way I kind of wanted them portrayed. So that's kind of what
the way
it
that
has the Terminator feel.
The way that he's
Yeah.
crouching there looks like he's just sort of emerged from one of those glowing bubbles that's transported him through time. And also, you know, you've got the red eye there glowing as well, or if it's
Right.
an eye or a reflection. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when it was done and I sent it off to Andrew for color, you know, the only thing I told Andrew was like, think the carbon freezing chamber on Bespin from Empire Strikes Back. And he's like, got it. And it kind of ran away with it. So yeah, Andrew and I work really well together. I only have to tell him a few things and, you know, he gets it right away, like what I'm thinking, and he comes up with some really cool stuff. So yeah, so but he had colored the other one first. So when they told me the other one was done. And so when they told me I couldn't have the Transformer stuff in it, I was like, holy shit, what am I gonna do?
I'll just add the Transformers view to the screen there.
Yeah, so I put on the rockets from the mobile missile systems, and I was like, it works out well because your store's name is TC's Rockets, and you've got these red rockets on there, and they're like, okay, that's awesome. And we even put on the fins of the rockets TCR MMS, so TC Rockets Mobile Missile System. So we snuck that in on the fins. So the original idea was Steve wanted, and I think you can see it here. Steve wanted Rumble's pile drivers being put onto all the bats. And man, when he first told me that, I'm like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to make that look cool? And that's when I came up with this factory idea. And so Skybound messaged me back saying that they love the cover. And then I got another email quickly after that asking what the things on the arms were. And I knew right away. I was like, I told Steve, I'm like, I don't think they're going to go for it, but I mean, I'll try. And so I tried to like inflate it as like, they're these like crazy big weapons, and you know, they're putting on there and everything. And then, you know, tried to bullshit my way through it. And then they emailed me back and they're like, what are they really? I'm like, okay, they're Rumble's pile drivers. The owner of the store asked for them, you know, so I put them on there, and they're like, we know, we just wanted to make sure that you were upfront and, you know, telling us what they were. I'm like, yeah. So they're like, you can't have them on there. So I had to draw rockets separately and kind of have them digitally put over the top. So that's how that came to be. But you know, after the Destro thing, what Skybound did. So after I did the Destro cover, now Skybound has these whole line of covers coming out with schematics. You know, where it's the next one is like this tank, where it's got the blueprints under them. So Skybound knows how to appropriate a good idea and run with it. So they you never know, you could see a bat in the future with Rumble's pile drivers on it. And well, at least now you know where that idea came from. And I mean, that's half the battle, right? So
Jamie,
yeah,
Andrew Crossley was one of the first color artists, I think, to work on G.I. Joe at
long time
IDW.
ago. Yeah.
Both the original run by Chuck Dixon and also the first covers for Real American Hero when it started up again at 155 and a half and 156. And he is not a color artist I have associated with G.I. Joe for a long time. Unless maybe he's been doing variants that I haven't been tracking. How did you pick him or find him, or how did someone suggest him?
So I've had some really great colorists I worked with, including my daughter. And it's kind of crazy. Some of the guys I've worked with, IDW has really liked the stuff that they've done with me. So they tap them to do other jobs, and then they don't have time for me. So I'm usually left in the lurch trying to find another artist. another colorist, and Andrew was on a message board on Facebook, like a group, a colorist group, when I was looking for somebody, and there was a guy. There was a guy he did some work for, and the guy didn't pay him or whatever, and was kind of a, you know, I'm like, I'm not going to pay you because I don't like the work you didn't do. It didn't turn out like I thought it would. And Andrew's like, that's not my fault, you know. And they were kind of going at it online, and I felt bad, you know, because the work was really, really good. It was top notch. I mean, the guys worked for Marvel and, you know, DC and IDW. I mean, he's worked, you know, on a lot of big projects. And I reached out to him, and it turns out that, you know, he's from my hometown in Sacramento. We're the same age, um, and just chatted for a minute, and like he didn't know kind of where it was going, and I was like, I'd like you to do colors on some of my covers for GI Joe, and he's like, all right, and you know, what are you offering? You know, I offered him, you know, higher than what he was getting at the time, and so paid him right away, and you know, he didn't have to wait for anything, and you know, he was really happy, and he was getting stuff done quick, and then we just started to click, and next thing I know, we've, you know, probably already done like 20 pieces together. So
Is this standard where you, the artist, doing a variant cover, are paying the color artist? I'd assume that most often the editor picks the cover artist and then
so,
finds the colorist or accepts the suggestion of the colorist.
so that it depends. It's a very fluid situation. So at IDW would pay a flat rate. Here's what we're going to pay for the cover and the colors, the inks, everything. And so most of the time, you know, I would find my own colorist and then offered to pay them out. Like I knew I wasn't going to get paid a lot working in IDW on GI Joe, but I understood what would come from working on an IP like this, like all the perks that would come with it, the recognition and everything. So the money that they were paying me for the cover wasn't, you know, like a deal breaker for me, you know, because IDW didn't pay very well. I'm just going to say that. So I did it for everything that came along with working on GI Joe and Transformers at IDW. So yeah, I would find my own colorist, and I would often pay them more than what I got, you know, my share of the cover, just to make sure that I had, you know, somebody really good working with me. And you know, it all paid out in the end, you know, because I would keep the original art and sell it because I don't draw digitally. You know, I draw on pen and paper still. So I would have an original piece of art to sell. But yeah, a lot of times too, um, you know, an artist will just send in their pencils, and then the editor will find an inker that they have, you know, that they rely on, and a colorist that they rely on for a lot of things. You know, Netho's a prime example. When he was working on GI Joe, he would just send in pencils, and then Tom would find somebody to ink it, and somebody to color it. You know, that was all out of Netho's hands. You know, but yeah. So I mean, there are teams, obviously, you know, of guys that work on, you know, GI Joe and whatnot. That, you know, it's, you know, they draw and ink their own stuff, and they have a colorist that they work with on a regular basis. So Andrew now is, I mean, you know, he's told me before that, you know, he has no desire to not work with me. So I mean, you know, as long as he has time, you know, he'll keep coloring my stuff. I mean, I like his approach to it. You know, I like that I don't have to explain a lot. Sometimes he does, kind of his own thing and surprises me, and I really like how it turns out.
And in terms of this cover, where's the best place that people can go to find it?
So it's TCS. It's supposed to be like TC's Rocket. So it's tcsrocket.com. So what's crazy is, a lot of these covers, shops online are asking for their retailer exclusives, they're asking like $20 or $30. This one, Steve, they only ordered 1,000 copies of it. That's the bare minimum. That's the other thing I'll tell you about in a minute. But so they only ordered 1,000 copies for it. It was $14.99, but it's on sale right now for like $11 plus shipping. And it's at tcsrocket.com, where you can order it. So a lot of people have been messaging me, letting me know that it's like the cheapest variant, like being offered for G.I. Joe #1, because Steve, the owner of the store, firmly believes, like I do, that he would rather sell through it than be sitting on covers. He'd rather sell all of them at $11 than sell a third of them at like $20 a piece. It's like a lot of things in this world. You make more money on volume than you do margin. So I like where his head's at on that, and I like that it's affordable and it'll get in a lot of people's hands. That I'm pretty happy with. What I was going to tell you too about quantity is I always kind of chuckle when I see these stores post up that they've got this variant cover and it's limited to only 500 copies, and I'm like, a lot of people don't realize that the minimum order for a cover through Skybound is 1,000 copies. The only way you can get 500 is if you order 1,000 of one cover, and then say you want a virgin variant. You can order 500 copies of that, but you have to order 1,000 of the one particular of the main cover. So, yeah, I always chuckle when I see that limited only 500 were printed, only 250 were printed. I'm like, okay.
And speaking
right.
of virgin variants, is there going to be a virgin variant of this one?
So, yes, there is going to be a virgin variant. It will obviously not with the pile drivers, but with the rockets, there will be a virgin variant. It is. They have not put it up for sale yet. I do not know when they're going to put it up for sale, but they only ordered 200 copies of it. That's all they wanted. I get 50 copies of it from them, but I am going to be sending them all out to be graded. Half of them signature series and half of them just regular blue label. Because they're going to be selling all theirs raw, but I'll be selling my 50 copies graded. So they will be available at some point. I just don't know when.
Right. And so where do people need to go to keep an eye out for your graded copies direct from you?
Yeah, they can just follow me on Facebook, Instagram. Oh my gosh, I'm on so many
everywhere.
media. I'm on so many social media platforms. I'm just gonna be real here. I only really update Facebook and Instagram religiously. The rest of them, you can find me on there and I'll do some posts here and there, but there's so many. Like I'm on X, which is like a hellscape. Like that, man. I'm also on Threads and Kara and Hive and Mastodon and Blue Sky. And yeah, a lot. It's a lot.
So yeah, if I know you often make these things available as the signed and CGC'd version. So if that's your deal, then obviously make sure you're following Jamie and get them direct when available. So we've pulled you away from San Diego, the biggest San Diego Comic Fest.
It's tiny.
the one that everyone
It's
talks
tiny.
about.
It's at a spa. It literally, I'm at the Westin hotel and spa in Carlsbad. Like, I'm more interested, honestly, in looking at like the spa prices here than, you know. But I mean, it's cool. It's like, this show is all about comic books, which is really nice. I mean, there's no movie or TV celebrities here. It is just comic book creators and writers. Yeah, it's awesome. That's pretty cool.
Excellent. So, yeah, I think we've pointed people in the right direction to find you online. So make sure that they do go and check you out. And yeah, if you're into the G.I. Joe as well, it's not just this cover as well. There's all sorts of prints that you're regularly making available if you're following Jamie to make sure that you're looking out for those.
Yeah. You can find me also at jamiesullivan.net. And after the first of the year, I've got a book coming out. It is a kind of a retrospective of the last, because in January it'll be the my 10-year anniversary of working on G.I. Joe. So I've got a retrospective coming out that is being co-written by my buddy Michael Charles Hill, who's famous for creating Cold Slither, Special Mission Brazil. So yeah, he's kind of writing it, and it's a ton of art, a lot of never before seen stuff from G.I. Joe that I've worked on that never saw the light of day. Yeah, so that'll be out in January.
Excellent stuff. Thank you so much. Was there anything more for you, Tim? Otherwise, I can just say thank you so much for taking the time, Jamie. And yeah, look forward to seeing what is coming next for you in the world of G.I. Joe. There's always something.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, Jamie.
Cool. That was cool. Hearing a bit of the behind the scenes on the creation of a variant direct from, I'm not calling him a horse, but direct from the horse's mouth.
Also, and only 23 more retailer variant covers to go, and then the episode's over. We'll do these last ones fast, folks.
So next up, Big Clutch Wanted Comics, Big Leg Joe Benitez variant from the man himself, Joe Benitez, and that comes in two flavors, one with logo and one without, aka a virgin variant. Are you excited to see Joe Benitez back on Joe?
I am. He drew G.I. Joe Origins 19, which was a wordless issue written by Larry Hama, featuring Snake Eyes for IDW. What was that? Like 2010. And yes, I'm happy to see him back on Joe.
This time illustrating a pinup of Chameleon. And speaking
of pinups of Chameleon.
Speaking of pinups of Chameleon, here's another one, 616 Comics. This is a Nathan Scherzi Virgin variant featuring Chameleon. And speaking of Chameleon, here is another version of that Jenny Frison cover, this time in a grey tone color splash foil card Virgin variant. And this one comes to you direct from friend of the show, Sam Wells, the proprietor of the Toy du Jour comic shop. So here we have a former Devil's Due team member, publisher, bringing you something from the Skybound era. So exciting to see Sam sort of bringing us something direct from his shop. Nice to see him being involved.
Here.
Almost there. This is the Afshari Comics Javan Jordan foil variant. It sort of looks a bit like, I don't know, a bridge or almost a coliseum with Cobra troops lined up. We've got a his tank down the bottom and a trio of Cobra Commander, Destro, and Chameleon up top. And then finally, we have TFAW, Things from Another World, foil variant from artist Ryan G. Brown. And this is a G.I. Joe the movie inspired image with the Skybound era characters. So we've kind of got the G.I. Joe curved logo in the front. We've got Duke and Cobra Commander sort of pointing up front. Tomex and Zaymot, a bat, Stalker, Rock and Roll, and below Destro, Baroness, and I think that is a Globulus atop a throne down the bottom.
Mark, when you say G.I. Joe the movie homage, you mean specifically the movie poster, the animated movie poster, because of the curved logo, the red, orange, yellow burst in the top background, but not as much with the character poses and placement. I would say this is sort of a half homage.
Yeah. Let me pull up an image for comparison.
Dun, 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 bah, dun, 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 bah, dun, 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 dun.
Doom, 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 boom, boom, boom. So we got a bit of pointing, but yeah, it's mostly that sort of curved logo, and I guess the sort of the steps and that sort of the red down the bottom is sort of echoed slightly in the red cloak of Globulus.
You know what I'd call this?
Well,
I'd call this a partial homage where these characters are standing in front of a cardboard standee cutout of the animated movie poster in the lobby of a movie theater.
Okay, very good. Where are we?
76 more retailer.
That is it.
covers.
That is it. We are done. So many covers.
50 many covers. Mark, which is your favorite of the the regular ones, including ratios, and which is your favorite of the store retailer exclusives?
I really like the. We can look at the guide here. I really like
Thank you, Greg Augustin. Wait, Greg Austin?
Augustin, yeah.
Thank you, Greg Augustin.
I really like the cover A. I think that's really striking. And I really like the Lee Bermejo as well. So for the main covers, it's a sort of a bit of a toss up between those two. In terms of the rest, obviously, I can't talk about Jamie Sullivan's because that, I'd be showing bias there. So putting his cover aside, I think Mike Mayhew's is nice because that he does what he does so well, but also the broken glass Marco Suyam I think is Miko. Thank you. Is a nice image as well. But and then also it's less sort of driven by the actual interiors of the issue itself. And I do like a cover to be kind of tied to what's going inside. So it kind of doesn't tick that box for me. But apart from that, so I like the Simmons Martin Simmons Cobra Commander covers. Again, sort of very talented artist and a striking image.
How many covers do you think he'll buy?
I'm not a completionist on the covers, so typically I will get the cover A and be happy with that, and then if something comes my way, then I might add it on, but I won't sort of so much actively seek them out. So I asked about the foil variants because that just sounds really cool, and I'm a bit of a sucker for a foil variant. But yeah, beyond that, I'm sort of not too worried about trying to seek out lots of these as a personal taste. I can enjoy seeing them as an image and not needing to have absolutely every single one in my own personal collection.
For the brave listeners and viewers who are still with us, please take this as a challenge and an invitation. If you get the blank N or O covers with the little Joe logo or little Cobra logo, and you have an artist draw G.I. Joe stuff on it, why not show us on the Talking Joe Facebook group? And maybe we can do a little spotlight or make a little gallery or just tell you how cool it is. And thank you for sharing.
Very good. And anything else to talk about before we wrap up, Tim?
Tom Reilly is signing at Hub Comics on Saturday, November 16th from noon to 4. That's 3 days after G.I. Joe issue number 1 is released. We will have a lot of variants, and we will have every issue of Duke and Cobra Commander and Scarlet and Destro and the soft covers that have been released up to that point, and Void Rivals and Transformers, and also the new compendium for Real American Hero. So and lots of G.I. Joe back issues, particularly from the IDW era. So come out, meet Tom Reilly, say hello to me, and buy some stuff.
Very cool. Will there be bundles of the
Yes.
1 to 4 of 1 to 5 of
Yes.
Duke?
Yes, there will. So if you already have all the issues and you need the softcover trade paperback collection, or you have all the A covers but you want the B covers, or you have all the issues but you want to get a set to give to a friend because the Duke miniseries is so good, come on out. We'll have some deals.
Very, very good. So I think with all
Very
of that
close
said and
again.
done, we I think we're pretty much done talking about covers now. But if people wanted to find you, Tim, to hear you talk or write or produce videos about things that aren't G.I. Joe covers, where might they go?
youtube.com/@AtomicAbe and arealamericanbook.com.
Very good. And if you want to find out more about us, we are at talkingjoe.co.uk. That is the link to all of the places. And we are supported by our Patreon members who joined us via patreon.com/talkingjoe. So if you want to be a cool kid like Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, Justin, Rob, Shane, Simon, Chris, Joe, Craig, Frank, and Mike, then, head on over to there where you can access early content and just have a warm glow that you're helping to the running cost of this stuff. StreamYard has put up their prices. It's astonishing.
And I'm not cheap, folks. Most of the money that Mark gets that he doesn't pay into hosting and audio tape and microphone fixes goes to me, and I'm worth every penny. So tell your friends to become Patreon members of Talking Joe.
I'm just worried about the person that doesn't know anything about G.I. Joe and then listens to this. Yes. Anyway,
this would not be the first. This would not be the best first episode of Talking Joe to listen to.
So if you have watched all the way to the end, thank you for your perseverance, and hope you are looking forward to the first issue of the brand new G.I. Joe issue number 1 coming out 13th of November. Listen up, soldiers! It's exciting times. So until then, what is it that we say, Tim?
Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
There we go. Laters.